Siphamandla Goge in Pietermaritzburg, but I want to first speak to Justice Albie Sachs so we can release him, so we can get his views, not on the matters before courts, let's be very clear about that in as far as former President Jacob Zuma is concerned, but certainly around the foundations of our constitution and how strong they are or how weakened they have become. He will tell us what he thinks. Justice Albie Sachs, always a pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you for joining me once again. Just your sense of how much how much the Constitution and the institutions that have been put in place by this Constitution and the supremacy of the Constitution were tested in the last week or so, and did we make the grade in as far as that test is concerned?
Let me tell you, I'm very, very biased in the sense of being a former judge, but I feel so proud. And I think the pride that I feel is shared by millions of South Africans and people all over the world, because the Constitution is holding hard, difficult, complex problems, complex politically, socially, psychological level. But we have a body of people, specially trained, carefully selected, independent, established by the Constitution, with these kind of crises in mind, not knowing exactly what it's going to be, and not starting off on anybody's side, the side of the Constitution. And the judges have held firm. They've given their views. They've given their views very, very clearly. The public know what the views are. And the pride we get is not, are we happy with the outcome? Are we happy with particular results that occur? Some people will be very happy, some very unhappy, but we are happy with the process. We are happy that South Africa can hold its head very, very proudly high in the world in terms of, we've got so many problems in this country, but one area where we're shining is the strength and integrity of our judiciary.
Sure, the strength and the integrity of our judiciary is one thing, Justice Sachs, but, you know, the other elements to this in vindicating the rule of law, the other organs of state needed to come to the party as well, certainly in as far as the events of the last few weeks are concerned, especially doing so under difficult political considerations, but it would seem, in as far as the SAPS at least, and the Minister of Police and other functionaries this time around, they lived up to their expectations in as far as their constitutional duty is concerned. Talk to me about institutions and the role that they played in ensuring that the rule of law is vindicated this week.
That's absolutely correct. The judges can issue, and they gave very, very clear instructions in terms of the order, and there was a certain phase of confusion, but the SAPS came to the party. I wouldn't call it a party, but they delivered, and it was so dramatic. I was watching literally on midnight, almost like an inverted Cinderella story. Will the arrest take place in time, in compliance with the law? And to the credit of Jacob Zuma, he voluntarily handed himself over at the very last minute, but he did so, and it's him showing respect for the Constitution that he had fought his life to achieve. He had chosen, I think, 6 of the 9 judges. He had personally chosen them from lists given to him, and at the very, very last minute, he acknowledged the supremacy of the Constitution and his duty to obey the law, the instructions that have been given in terms of the court order. The police played their role. I think they did it very deftly, without that swagger, without handcuffs, and without undue forms of intimidation or humiliation. It was handled with great dignity.
I'm pretty sure, though, Justice Sachs, that you will have heard the conversation that suggests that in a way, actually, the Constitution this week was violated in a major way, in that you had a 79-year-old man being sent to prison without trial. There's been this argument about detention without trial, something that we thought we had left in the days of apartheid. What's your thinking around those arguments, without weighing in, of course, on the court matters that are before courts?
Yes. You know, I was detained without trial. That phrase, I was the one who put it in the Constitution very early on, the very first draft, I said, because that was foundational to the corruption and destruction of the whole process of prosecution. We'd be locked up. I was picked up walking into my chambers as an advocate. No warrant of arrest, no charges, no lawyers, no appearing before court, chucked into prison, detained without trial for 168 days. Nothing like that seems to be on the agenda now. I don't want to go into the ins and outs of this particular case, but to my mind, as a former person who was detained without trial, I personally don't see that issues raised at all. Everything was done openly, through the courts, publicly. We watched on television, and the lawyers had their chance to speak. But as I said, I'm not commenting on the argument. I'm not speaking now as Judge Albie. I'm speaking as former Judge Albie, if you like, but I'm speaking as somebody who was detained without trial. And happily, we don't have that in South Africa today. If you're arrested, you have to be arrested on the basis of a warrant, of a charge. You have to be brought before court within a certain time. You have the right to make your representations. You have the right to challenge the evidence against you. All of those things we didn't have. That's detention without trial.
So lastly, Justice Sachs, and I appreciate your stance on not wanting to comment directly on the matters that are currently before the courts. But what I am hoping you will comment a bit extensively on is this subject of the ANC's role in as far as the Constitution is concerned. Ours is a loud democracy, many differing views, contesting, many concepts in our society on a daily basis. There was a statement that came out a bit earlier on in the week, and I don't know if you saw it, but I'll quote from it a little bit, Justice Sachs, from the ANC, where they're basically saying that they are restating their commitment, our unequivocal commitment to and defense of the Constitution, in particular the supremacy of the Constitution, the rule of law and the independence of the judiciary amongst the founding principles and values of the Republic. And here's the part that I would like your comment on. The NEC reaffirmed our understanding that we consciously chose a democratic system and constitutional dispensation. It was not an accident, concession, or a compromise, but rather an expression of our fundamental values and beliefs as espoused by the African Claims, the Freedom Charter, the Harare Declaration, and the constitutional principles. And you are very familiar with that history. But on a daily basis, Justice Sachs, you hear an argument that says this is a neoliberal constitution imposed on us. This constitution is unconstitutional. It's a constitution of the West. It's a constitution of white monopoly capital interests. What do you make of what the ANC has said about its commitment to this constitution and its origins?
Well, I left the ANC in 1994 because I wanted to be considered to be a judge. And you can't be loyal to the Constitution and loyal to the political party. I didn't want to be caught between having different forms of instruction, as it were. So haven't been active in the ANC since 1994. But I have been working very much on the history of how we got a constitution. And I was very much involved with the Constitutional Committee under the leadership of Oliver Tambo. And if anybody's DNA is to be found in the Constitution, it's Oliver Tambo. And he drew on the African claims of 1944 during World War II. It goes back even further, 1923, a Bill of Rights in the ANC. And this was before the PAC split away from the ANC on particular grounds in relation to the Freedom Charter. These were accepted by the whole movement. And the 85 to to 90 constitutional committee working on our vision of a new constitution for South Africa, and you see step by step from what was said in 85, the Harare Declaration, which then went to the United Nations and was accepted by acclamation by the United Nations. There you will find the whole framework of our constitution. And it was pioneered by Oliver Tambo. Thabo Mbeki was working with him. Many other people working very, very closely with him on it. It's an African document developed in Africa by great African minds and people thinking. And its objective was to transform our country and make it a country for everybody. How much we've achieved that is very much open for debate and discussion today. But in terms of the making of the Constitution, and I'm very happy to say Professor Andre Odendaal is getting all the documents together, and by the end of this year we hope to have a book that establishes step by step by step by step what the foundations of our Constitution were. They were not neoliberal at all. The neoliberals were challenging us and fighting us. They were there for the people with a deep, profound African sensibility.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time. Justice Albie Sachs, a retired Constitutional Court Justice there, one of the great legal minds of our time, really, and writes, he used to write beautifully in as far as judgments are concerned. I always say that I gauge the quality of a judgment in if it feels like a lecture, if it feels like, you know, after I've read it, I'm settled in my mind on the question of law, etc. And Justice Albie Sachs used to write those kinds of judgments.